Hey there, Taylor Elwood here, and welcome to the Men's Mysteries. Today, I'm going to be talking about my relationship with anxiety, and this is going to be a part one of a part two series because I'm going to talk about my relationship with anxiety before I transformed that relationship. And I'm going to talk a bit about what I did to transform it, and then I'm going to talk about in the next broadcast, what I've continued to do to transform that relationship. Here's the thing. If you were to look at me on the surface, you would not think that I was dealing with anxiety every day. I have written and published over 53 books in my life. I own a home. I have several different businesses that I run. And I am actively pursuing getting my black belt in Kung Fu. And that's just a few things off the top of my head that I can list in terms of things that I'm doing. I'm also actively engaged in men's work. So it might surprise you to hear that I actually have dealt with anxiety. Thing is that I've dealt with anxiety all my life. And there have been times that I haven't really known how to talk about that or be honest about it because it's been one of those things, it's been a source of shame in my life. I mean, here's what I learned growing up. Big boys don't cry. Don't express your emotions. Keep it to yourself. A real man has it all figured out. Those are just a few of the messages. And I know that anyone watching this can relate to that experience because the fact of the matter is, chances are you've heard those same messages if you're a man. And that is one of the most profoundly sad things that can occur. There's so many messages that we as men hear that actually keeps us from fully expressing who we are and being connected. And it doesn't help that what men learn early on is to isolate themselves. I mean, what I learned growing up is that other boys and men were competition. Having close male friendships was not something that I really experienced. I was always one of the odd people out. So I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. And although I had a few male friendships, those friendships were always tinged by this kind of competitive aspect where it was kind of like we had to prove ourselves to each other and to ourselves and to our families that we were quote unquote man enough. And I think that was one of the most profound elements of my anxiety because for me, anxiety came in the form of trying to figure out how to navigate my life and stay safe. And I'm going to level with you here. I grew up in a home where there was a fair amount of abuse. I mean, I was told regularly by my dad that I was a disappointment. Didn't get good grades? You're a disappointment. Didn't get on to the football team? You're a disappointment. Oh, you're doing chorus? Well, that's a disappointment. Why can't you be doing things that are more manly? And those were some of the things that I heard growing up. And that was just from him. I mean, when I throw in my stepmom, basically I was dealing with the Cinderella complex. I was always trying to get her approval. She was angry at me for something that I hadn't even done, been something my older brother did. But he no longer lived with us, so she took all of her anger out on me because I was a reminder to her of him. And so those were the experiences I had growing up, and I wasn't allowed to express my emotions. If I tried to express my emotions, that was just quashed. So what I ended up doing is I learned to direct my emotions inward. I got angry about a situation. I turned that anger inward. I directed it toward me. I felt afraid or felt doubt. I pushed it down as hard as I could. I learned how to craft a very stoic face by the time I was a preteen. And yet I was depressed. And that depression was something that was with me all the time. I remember at one point telling my dad that I was depressed, and he's like, "You're 14. Why are you depressed?" I'm like, "Well, I'm happy. I want to go live with my mom," things like that. And eventually I did go live with my mom. I couldn't say to him, the reason I'm depressed is because of you, because I'm never good enough for you, because it doesn't matter what I do. I couldn't tell him that the reason I was depressed was because I was living in a home where I was told to go swimming every day because my stepmom didn't want me around, or she wanted me outside so that I wasn't near her kids. So I grew up feeling very unwanted. And this is something that, that if you were to look at me from the surface, you wouldn't think that. You think, oh, he's a fun, gregarious, interesting kind of guy. He's into some neat stuff. And that was the home situation, and then of course there was the situation at school because I stuck out like a sore thumb. I didn't fit in with most of those kids, and it didn't help that sometimes I displayed some obnoxious behaviors myself. I remember once I got to a new school and I started being a bit of a shit. I was to other kids, and a couple of them basically responded in kind, and I quickly learned my place. um, and it was a learning lesson. It was a learning experience. But what I didn't have is I didn't have a sense of genuine brotherhood or connection. What I had was me trying to hold it all together. And it felt like on the inside, I was quivering, like I was a bit of jello. And that's how it felt most of my life. I felt like jello, like a quivering mass of jello, like you could poke me. If you poked me hard enough, you'd feel it. And that's what it felt like to live with anxiety. It wasn't like I had a panic attack, every day or anything like that. In fact, most of the time, if I look back on my life, I had very few panic attacks. I had occasional moments where I might have a trauma response along those lines, but for the most part, I never really had panic attacks. But I still felt the anxiety show up in the form of analysis paralysis. I'd get caught up in my head, overthinking my decisions and choices. I'd feel anxious about decisions that I had made, and I would question myself, and I would try to outthink outthink the emotions, have outlogic it, figure it out in every possible way. And if that sounds familiar to you, yeah, that's kind of a reality when you're feeling anxious. One of the other experiences that I had with anxiety was that feeling of doubt. I didn't fully trust myself. I didn't trust my decision making thing. It didn't help that I would at times have people in my life who would question it as well. Like I remember moving to the West Coast and my mom being like, "Are you sure you really want to do that?" Yeah, I was pretty sure I wanted to do that. But feeling that doubt poke at me was hard. When I needed someone to believe in me and say, "You know what, I think you've got this," I didn't really have that. So consequently, I transferred that into me. And here's the irony of it all. Despite all that, I wrote all the books that I've written. I've done all the things that I've done. But here's the interesting thing that I think really plays at the heart of anxiety. For me, underneath anxiety was a deep rooted fear. And it was a deep rooted fear based around surviving. Was I going to be okay? Could I be okay with myself? Could I be okay with the world? These were the questions that haunted me in a lot of ways. And I didn't feel okay a lot of the time. I didn't know if I was going to be okay. And this is actually something that shows up in attachment theory where we look really at the fundamental basis of attachment is about, can I be okay? Can I be okay with you? Can I be okay with myself? Can I be okay with the world? Which is one of the reasons why right now so many people aren't feeling okay. If we look at the state of the world, there's a lot of anxiety coming up. And it makes sense. And here's the challenge. If you're a man, expressing that you don't feel okay is frowned upon. Because that's you're expressing emotion. And you're not supposed to express emotion. You're supposed to have it all together and have it all figured out. You're supposed to be so rock solid and have it all sorted out. And that puts a tremendous amount of pressure on a man. Thing is that although I have this anxiety now, and it still occasionally rears its head. It reared its head last week. In fact, I had a moment where I felt a lot of anxiety. I was kind of like, am I going down the right path? I don't know what I'm doing, et cetera, et cetera. Overall, I've gotten anxiety sorted out. What I've had to do is I've had to learn how to lean in to anxiety, lean into the discomfort of being anxious, and recognize that anxiety is an invitation to get curious. Get curious about the feeling of anxiety itself, and get curious about what's underneath anxiety. For me, what's underneath anxiety is fear. And so if you're a man that's watching this, you can probably relate to that, because chances are when you felt anxious, there may be a deeper sense of fear underneath there. Try this on for size. This just something I'm going to invite you to do in this moment. When you're going through your day, what are some of the thoughts that you're thinking? For example, if you're thinking to yourself, I've got to figure this out. I've got to keep it together. I've got to figure out what I'm going to need to do to provide for the family. Or push it down. You're going to get through this. If you felt any of that, or thought any of that, and I know I have, you're dealing with anxiety. And I want to normalize that, because anxiety is a normal feeling to have. What isn't normal is us keeping it to ourselves. It doesn't serve us. It actually disempowers us. I can't show up effectively for myself, let alone anyone else, if I'm letting my anxiety run the show. And a lot of times in my life, I've let anxiety run the show. And it has been one of the most hard experiences to deal with, because it feels like a strike into the center of my body. But what I've learned to do is I've learned to regulate that. I've learned to get comfortable with it. And part of the way that I get comfortable with it is through some self-exercises. So like taking a deep breath in and holding it for 4 seconds and then breathing out. You can try that right now. If you're watching this, I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose and hold for a count of 4. So, and then breathe out with your mouth. Just let that out. That's an example right there of something that you can do to regulate your body. And there are some other processes and techniques that you can learn as well. I have below here a free guide. You're going to see it out. This is live right now, but you'll see it after the fact. A free guide that you can get, which is all about moving from chaos to clarity. And in this guide, I share a few different techniques that I've used over the years that have helped me become calmer and calmer and learn how to lean into my anxiety and turn it into an ally that works with me to transform my life. Because the secret I've discovered with anxiety is that when I turn anxiety into a fuel source, into something that motivates me to move ahead, I end up getting to go on some very interesting adventures and meet some very interesting people. And there are moments where it's a bit scary. I want to be clear about that, but I'm able to handle that. The other thing I want to point you to is that I have a class that's coming up. It's going to be in July, and it has 12 spots open. And in that class, we're going to do an even deeper dive into this process of working with anxiety and translating it from anxiety to action. Because really what happens with anxiety is that anxiety puts us into inaction. Anxiety gets us into a place where we're numbing ourselves, where we're stuck in analysis paralysis, where we're trying to figure out what the right move is and strategizing that to the point that we're not actually doing anything. And if that's something that resonates and lands with you, then I definitely want to urge you to check out the free ebook that I have and also look into the class, because all of that is going to help you take decisive steps forward in your life. Next time, we're going to explore this in more depth. Today, what I really wanted to do was kind of give you a little bit of history about myself and my experiences with anxiety and show you that you're not alone. I know what it's like to deal with anxiety. And the other thing I will share is that anxiety is best faced when not alone, not by yourself, but best faced when you're with other men who can relate to what you're experiencing. One of the most powerful moments in my life was a night when I got onto a Zoom call. I was having a really rough week. I had briefly been seeing someone for a little while, and I decided to break the relationship off because I knew it wasn't ready. And I also knew that this person had a kid. I knew that I wasn't equipped to handle being with somebody who had a kid. And so I was feeling really bad. I was beating up on myself, even though I had done the right thing. I had been honest and clear with that person that it wasn't going to work out. I had made the decision that I needed to figure something else out, and that I knew that it wasn't that the best thing I could do was take care of myself. Yet I still felt paralyzed by anxiety. I was like, I'll never be with anyone again. I screwed it up yet again. Those were the thoughts that were going through my head. And I got on the Zoom call, and I was afraid to share some of these things with. I knew I was going to be getting on this. I was afraid to share this with other men because I thought they were going to make fun of me. But I made myself go and do it because I knew that if I didn't make myself go do it, what was going to happen is that I was going to keep myself back from fully engaging in my life. And I was going to hold myself back from fully showing up. And I didn't want to go through that. So I decided to get on there. And as I listened to those men check in and share some of their experiences, I realized I wasn't alone. And it was a very profoundly moving experience for me because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone in terms of sharing what I was going through. And that's why when it comes to handling anxiety and it comes to the challenges of being a man, you can't go it alone. Trying to be the lone wolf, trying to figure it out all on your own isn't working. You wouldn't be watching this video right now if it was working. You wouldn't be reading the articles or looking into some of the other things if it was working. It's not working. And that's okay. There's no shame there. The fact is, we were sold a bad bill when it comes to manhood and masculinity. We were given a model of masculinity that is really based on disempowering everyone, including the men. And look at the results. We have a lot of men out there who are scared, who are angry, who are hurting, and don't know how to connect with each other and don't know how to connect with women in their lives or with their kids. And that's one of the reasons why I do this work, because having been one of those men, I know how powerful it can be when we actually start to work with ourselves and we do it in conjunction with other men. We have that support. So if that's something that interests you, definitely recommend that you check out the free guide that I'm going to have posted below in the show notes, and also look into the class because you don't have to go through this journey alone. And really, brother, I've got you. Thanks for watching, and I will be back in a couple days to talk even more about this very interesting and insightful and powerful journey into exploring anxiety as it shows up with men.